So, the first skill that we wanted to highlight this month is the executive functioning skill of metacognition. We chose to highlight this skill because, as you will come to find out through this presentation, metacognition really is the root of so many other skills and areas in a child's life. It really lays a nice foundation for children to start becoming aware of what works for them, what's a challenge for them, and in doing so, they really come to know themselves as learners, as students, and they can put themselves on a nice trajectory to try and figure out how they can be the most successful version of themselves. We also want to show you through this presentation, not only can students use the concept or the skill of metacognition to become strong students, but also it can really help them in different situations at home. So, we're going to start with talking about the term itself, metacognition. This tends to be a term that is unfamiliar to most. Metacognition is simply thinking about one's thinking. Helping students develop and grow their metacognitive abilities really increases their awareness of themselves as thinkers and learners. Having students and adults become aware of their strengths and challenges in order to improve their own learning and performance, this really lays the foundation for students to grow into adults who are aware of what they need, what helps them solve problems, how to regulate themselves emotionally, how to approach situations, whether it's a situation that they typically do well in or a situation that they might have some struggles in. Developing the metacognitive abilities is really going to help them navigate all of those different areas. Metacognition helps greatly with preparation and planning. We all know that sometimes children become very overwhelmed with tasks, or if you're thinking of home life on a daily basis, sometimes we have situations where our children are constantly leaving tasks unfinished. Thinking metacognitively helps them analyze tasks and think about what they can do to have more success. So, for example, sometimes when a child is getting ready to approach a writing piece, they get those negative feelings such as writing is difficult for me or I'm just not a good writer. Helping them think metacognitively helps them view it from a different standpoint. So instead of viewing that writing project or that writing piece so negatively, we would hope that we would teach our children to view it this way. I know this writing piece is going to make me feel anxious. What parts of it are going to make me feel the most anxious? And what can I do to fix that? If you're looking at routines, we want our children to view situations not in a way, I just can't get ready for school in the morning, or I'm always having stressful mornings because I can't get ready. We want to teach them to view it in a way such as, I'm usually rushing to get ready in the morning and I feel like I'm always forgetting things. What can I do to make this process easier? Now, it's really important while metacognition is such a helpful skill, it is not something that happens overnight. It's so important that we, as the adults in our children's lives, have a lot of patience in this area. We are teaching our children to become metacognitive thinkers, which takes time in practice. Students and children will usually require adult support, modeling guidance as these skills are developing. And you'll find that in a lot of situations, they still do need us to propose certain questions, which we will get to later in this presentation, to help grow those skills. Also, too, you will find as this website builds and we share more skills and strategies with you, sometimes children will need to start building metacognition in different areas from the ground up as they learn these different skills and strategies. Positive praise is also really important in this area. When we can see that our child is jumping on board with using metacognitive thinking, or we catch them thinking metacognitively to plan and prepare or help themselves in a situation, we want to make sure that we're recognizing that with positive praise. Different kinds of reinforcement too will help increase that motivation and really encourage children to want to keep thinking this way and support themselves. A really great starting point for building metacognition is to generate conversations with students or our children about strengths and challenges. It's specifically not noted as strengths and weaknesses because when we think of a weakness, we think of something that we just can't do, that is just something that we're not good at. Something that's a challenge, while it might not be something that we're good at yet, there's that notion surrounding it that a challenge is something that we want to overcome. And that's really what we want our children to be thinking of. Something might be challenging for me, but I can use the skills and strategies that I've been taught to try and overcome it. And I can do that by thinking, how can I overcome it? So it's really important for children to be encouraged to think about what areas they're strong in and what areas they need some extra support. It helps build awareness of themselves, it builds mindfulness of what works, and it builds mindfulness of those areas that are in need of improvement. If a child is aware of their strengths, they might pull on those strengths to help themselves navigate different situations or choose different situations that they can be a part of because they know that they'll be successful. Knowing that something is a challenge for them will encourage them to think of, okay, how can I overcome this with the tools and strategies I have in my back pocket? Or how can I approach this situation knowing that it's something that can present me with some challenges? So building that awareness is really step one, because we want to teach our children how they're going to approach these situations. Learning styles are another key component of metacognitive thinking. There are 4 areas or 4 different learning styles: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, reading, and writing. Knowing and understanding what type of a learner oneself is helps us know how we're going to be the most successful in a given situation. Now, certain children may be different learners in different areas. Sometimes those learning styles will change. But for example, I consider myself a very visual learner. I know that that's how I learn best. So when I'm approaching a certain situation, I have that in the back of my mind. Very often I will tell somebody, if they're trying to explain something to me, I'm a visual learner. If there's any way you can show me, even if you show me some component of this, I know that I will understand it better. So, children really having an understanding of how they learn best can really be a benefit to them. How can we help our students and our children develop metacognition? The way the ways that we can start to encourage this type of thinking is to really help our children engage in that reflection on their thinking, such as using questions. Can you tell me more about why you think that, when they come to you with a certain thought on a certain subject? Reflecting on their reactions. If we see that our children are getting really upset about something, instead of telling them, you shouldn't be upset about this, or this is really not a big deal, validate their feelings, but also try to get a sense of why they might be feeling that way. Why do you think you got so upset when blank happened? It gives us an insight into what they're thinking, but it also helps children become aware of, when situations like this happen, they tend to make me upset. So students can better prepare for what strategies they can then use when situations like that happen. Reflecting on possible solutions. When something happens and a child reacts a certain way and maybe they're not proud of it, or that reaction didn't give them the results that they were hoping for, instead of telling our children, next time don't do that, or next time you're going to do X, Y, or Z, we want to open the door to that thinking. How could you handle it differently next time? Get our children thinking about what they could change in the future, what didn't work for them this time that they might want to do differently next time. Reflection on different processes. How do you know when X is done? Really trying to fine tune their attention to directions and steps and directions, instead of telling our children, okay, your math assignment is done, or your homework is done, or your project is done. Really encouraging them to think, okay, are you done? How do you know? That really brings their attention to the nitty gritty details and helps them start to monitor and think about, have I completed my tasks? Have I done the things that I needed to do? Have I completed all of my jobs? And how do I know? So really encouraging our students to think about what they're doing, to think about the thoughts that are going through their head is going to be super important to make them not only more secure learners, but metacognitive learners. They're going to think about what it is that they're doing and whether or not they were successful. Self-talk is a huge proponent of metacognitive thinking. A lot of times when that thinking is activated, a huge piece of that is the self-talk, that internal dialogue that students can be having with themselves, asking themselves, what worked? What didn't work? What strategy do I want to use this time? What's going to help me? What can I remind myself of? Motivation. Students can give themselves, a self-talk pep talk and really be their own cheerleader to navigate different situations. Growth mindset, if they find themselves in a situation that's frustrating or hard, having that positive self-talk. This might be difficult for me right now, but I have a tool to do it. I have a strategy to do it. I'm going to work on doing it. A lot of times when children are faced with challenging situations, they can have a lot of negative self-talk. They can have some negative internal dialogue happening. We want to teach them to use self-talk to their advantage and put that positive spin on it. We can bring metacognition into different subject areas with self-talk. So for example, if a child is in a classroom and their teacher says, now we're going into math, we want to encourage our students' metacognitive thinking by teaching them the self-talk strategy and thinking, okay, math, what is it that I need for math? Which tools should I take out? If they're home, we want to say to them, okay, now we're going to start homework. We want to teach our children that self-talk when they hear homework. What does homework mean to them? What's the best place to do my homework? What tools do I need? What order do I want to do my homework in? Is there any homework that I'm unsure of? And again, all of this comes from a lot of discussion, modeling, guiding. We want to teach our children as they move through all of these different situations. Okay, homework today. Was it hard for you? Was it easy for you? What made it easy? What made it hard for you? Okay, maybe it was hard because you got very distracted. What can we do about that moving forward? Where can we find a place that's not distracting for you, where you can still get your homework done? When you go back to the math, when you're in math, what helped you be successful in math today? Okay, you had your multiplication chart. You sat towards the front of the room. You had a fidget out that you were using to help keep your brain in the group. What about this math lesson made you feel successful, and what tools do we want to carry into the future? Really important that I'm sure that you have kind of caught on to as this presentation has gone along. A lot of metacognition is discussion with students, that reflection piece. What worked and what did not? What do we want to bring with us as we move forward? It's very important to note too, some of these examples do toggle back and forth between school and home, but the concept of metacognition can be adapted to anything. So we can adapt these metacognitive conversations to all different subject areas. But when you think of your own home, you can do the same thing with chores, with getting ready, with routines, with situations between siblings. Look at different situations with your child and have those conversations. What worked and what was a challenge? And how can we use that information as we move forward? We can connect metacognition to emotional regulation. So, for example, if a child is telling you that they're feeling frustrated and angry, think about what you can do in that moment to help your child, and then have that conversation at another time when your child's cooled down. Okay, when you were frustrated and angry, we went for a walk. Do you feel that that helped you? Because then the child can adopt that thinking. When I feel frustrated and angry, going for a quick walk helps. They're having that metacognitive conversation, which means that now going forward, they have that strategy in their pocket. When they're frustrated and angry, going for a quick walk helps. Again, that's where our patience comes in as adults. The child may not remember that automatically the following time or even the time after. It's really important that us as adults remind them of these tools and strategies. And it might start with, okay, remember last time you were frustrated and angry, you took a walk and that helped. Why don't you take a walk? That will probably grow into, I'm noticing you're frustrated and angry. What can you do right now? And our hope and our goal as we model and coach and guide, that the child will catch on to that. They'll be able to respond with, I need a walk. We then hope eventually the goal is that we don't have to have that conversation. The child will pick up themselves, I'm angry, I need to go for a walk. And they'll ask you on their own, or they'll just go, obviously, with some safety parameters put in place. Other situations, losing during games. Sometimes children can get very upset when they lose during a certain game or a certain sporting event, or if they pick up on the fact that they are losing or their team is losing during that sporting event. Bringing their attention to the fact that, hey, when this happened, you got really upset. What can we do? What helped you in that moment? What didn't help you? Sometimes we gives children strategies that don't necessarily calm them down or calm them down at a good pace or don't make them feel better in those moments. So we want to have those conversations and bring the students thinking back. Okay, remember last time when you lost during your basketball game or when you noticed your team was losing, we offered for you to take a break. Do you feel that that helped? Yes or no? And then building that repertoire so that the child has the thinking, if I notice that my team is losing during a basketball game, I can ask to take a break and then jump back in when I'm ready. The idea of big problem, small problem, which is another skill that we're covering this month, teaching our children that thinking, that differentiation between big problems and small problems, and what we do about it. We want our children to get to the mindset of small problems usually have easy solutions. How can I solve this problem? This teaching is all connected to metacognition, because teaching our children to differentiate between sizes of problems and what we can do about it helps them become independent thinkers when they find themselves in those problem scenarios. So we want to teach them what they can do about it so that their toolbox is overflowing. Which, speaking of toolboxes, one of my favorite activities to do with my students is to help them build their own metacognitive toolboxes, with the ideas that these toolboxes change over time as our students, our children learn and grow and change themselves. Typically, what I'll do is I will present students with images or words, and I'll have the students choose which ones best suit their needs in that moment. I then give them an empty square piece of paper, which is their metacognitive toolbox, and they glue in the words and images that they feel best suit them at the time. This serves as a visual for their metacognitive toolbox so that they know what they have to pull on. So this is an example. So this student right here at this time, by choosing these images and words, this shows myself and this student that they find a calculator, a multiplication chart, Play-Doh, standing while working, a break card, checklists, and asking teachers to repeat directions, as well as the use of a 5-point scale. These are the strategies and tools that they find helpful right now. This is a visual for them. And it's also a visual for me. This helps them know what they can pull on when they find themselves in different situations. If we go back to that pre-planning, we used that example earlier of math tools. If this child in particular knows that a multiplication chart is helpful, they want to have that conversation with themselves when they hear math. I'm going into math. I know my multiplication chart helps me. I'm going to make sure that I have it out right away. This is something they can do in school as well as at home. Break cards, also something that they can metacognitively think about. If they know that a break card is helpful, they want to have that break card within their reach at any time, this way that they can use it. I just want to go back for a second just to reiterate the fact that anything that's used in school, we can find ways to adapt at home. So you might want to present your child with different pictures or scenarios or words phrases that go along with different situations that come up at home. Let them pick and choose what works for them. So, morning routine, afternoon routine, homework, playtime with siblings, playtime with friends in the neighborhood. We want to make sure that we can give them different tools and strategies that they can build their toolboxes for those different situations. This way, when anything comes up or they're going into a certain situation, they can feel prepared. Rapid naming, priming the brain, is also another area of metacognition, getting students to think about what goes into different topics and subject areas. So, if a student is in school getting ready to prepare for a certain subject area, we want them to get into the mindset of, I hear science, this is what I think of when I hear science. Social studies, math, you could even break it down to more specific topics. When I hear the American Revolution, what comes to mind when I hear the American Revolution? Fractions, plants, cells, Wordly Wise Lesson 7. We want to make sure that we are having these conversations with our children so that as they hear different topics, they get their brains ready for that type of learning. It helps drive their attention, it helps them focus on specifically the content connected to those different topics or those subject areas, keeps the brain in gear for relevant information, and helps prepare for discussion and studying. So if your child is at home and they're studying for a math test or they're studying for a social studies test, whatever the concept is, you maybe write it down on a piece of paper and just ask your child, when you hear this topic, what do you think of? This, they can then generate all the relevant vocabulary terms. It then makes it that much easier to kickstart studying because their brain is primed and geared up for the material that they should be knowing. Now, a lot of strategies and ideas were brought up during this presentation. A huge part of metacognitive is that meta review. As your child is trialing new strategies, you want to have those constant check ins. What worked and what doesn't? This way, that students can evaluate their performance. So, if you put something in place or your child is using a new strategy, you want to have those conversations. If a different situation comes up where they were using something or maybe they didn't use a strategy, what worked, what didn't work, and what can we do moving forward? If your child felt successful, what helped them be successful? If they did not feel successful, what could we try differently next time? Involving your children in that conversation is extremely important because then they can plan for future activities and situations. Those constant open ended questions are what is going to help your child develop and become those metacognitive thinkers so that they can become successful in all these different areas. And here are just some resources for some of the material used during this presentation. If you have any questions or concerns, definitely feel free to reach out. But I think that you'll find as we move through the building of this website that being a metacognitive thinker helps your children know how to put a lot of these strategies into place, helps them develop a knowledge of themselves as a thinker and a learner, and helps them grow their executive functioning skills. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and we look forward to tying metacognition into so much more information that we're going to present you with.